So let's begin with VR, substitution and opposite meaning. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the value of certain letters and then we are adding them together. So here we have A divided by D multiplied by B. So remembering BODMAS, which is division, multiplication, addition, and then subtraction, here we do our division first. So we take our value of A, which is 36, and then we divide it by our value of D, which is 6, and this equals to 6. Then we do 6 times 3, which is 18. And 18 is C, so our answer will be C. Next, question 2. We have bracket A plus C divided by D. So we take 27 and add 129. And then 27 plus 129 is equal to 156. Then we do 156 divided by 4. And that is equal to 39. And 39 as a letter will be B. So our answer to question 2 is B. We're just substituting our values based on the letters. Next, what is the answer to this sum written as a letter? Exactly the same. We're doing B times D minus C plus C times C, remembering our brackets. This is like simple algebra. So B times D will be 87 multiplied by 3. So 87 times 3 will be 261. And then we take C times C, which is 13 times 13. And that is equal to 169. So then we take both of those values, 261 minus 169, which is equal to 92. And that is our answer. It will be E. So, number 3 is E. Next is question 4. C divided by D minus A. So C is 86. And we divide this by D, which is 2. This equals 43. Then we do 43 minus A, so 43 minus 26. And that will be equal to 17. And that's our answer, B. So question 4 will be B. Next is question 5. B divided by D times A, so B is 168. And you divide this by D, which is 12. And this equals to 14. And then you do 14 times A, which is 4. And that will be equal to 56. And that means that our answer is C. Okay, next we have question 6. E times C divided by D minus A. And this is using our knowledge of BODMAS. So first we will divide. So C divided by D will be 14 divided by 7. and that's equal to 2. So we're doing 5, and then we look at m. So then we do 5 times 2, which is 10, and then we're doing 10 minus 3, which is 7. And that achieves our answer, which will be D. So the answer to question 6 is D. Next is question 7. E divided by B times C plus A. So once again, first we divide, so we do E divided by B. This is 72 divided by 8. 72. So we take 72 divided by 8 is then equal to 9. So then we take our value from there, and then we follow the m because it's multiplying, so we do 9 times 2, which is 18, and then we do 18 plus a, so 18 plus 5 is equal to 23. So that means that the answer to question 7 is D. Next is question 8. B times C divided by D minus E, so C divided by D is 6 divided by 3, which is equal to 2. And then we multiply, so we do B times by 2, so 5 times 2. And then we do that, which is equal to 10. And then 10 minus E, which is 4. So it's equal to 6. And our answer will be 6, which is C. Okay, and then we have E minus C, which is equal to 33 minus 3, which is equal to 30. And then we do that multiplied by B, which is 5. So 30 multiplied by 5 is equal to 150. And then we do 150 minus C, which is 27. So 150 minus 27 will be equal to 123. I see where we went wrong. We subtracted by the incorrect number. So what we're supposed to do here is E, which is 33, and then C, which is 27. So we subtract that, which is equal to 6. And then we do 6 multiplied by B, which is 5. So 6 times 5 is 30. And then we do 30 minus C, which is 27. And that's equal to 3. And 3 is option A. So that means that our answer to question 9 will be A. And then it's a similar process for question 10. First we do the brackets, which is C minus A, which is 5 minus 2. So 5 minus 2 is equal to 3. And then we do B multiplied by that. So 3 times 3 is equal to 9. And 9 is option E. So E will be our answer. Next, we move on to opposite meanings. So these are like antonyms. And this is all in VR. So looking at antonyms, the answer to question 1 will be ancient and modern, because ancient is something that's old and modern is something that's new. Then, question 2. The answer will be artificial and natural, because artificial is something that's man-made, whereas natural is something that isn't man-made, and hence they're opposites. Then, question 3. Question 3 will be blunt and sharp. This is looking at the sharpness of something. Question 4 will be vague and clear. Question 5 will be slack and tight. Slack is when something is very loose, whereas tight, well, it's the opposite, where something is very straight and often stiff. Question 6 is inside and exterior. We're looking at something on the inside and then the outside. Question 7 is dear and cheap. Dear can mean something expensive, and then cheap is, well, the opposite. It's something that has a low price usually. And then question 8 is rough and smooth. Question 9 is backward and forward. So this is looking at the direction of something. And then we move on to question 10, which is wild and calm. So wild is something that's often out of control, whereas calm is the opposite. It's something that is, often like very relaxed, or you could also relate it to tranquility. Question 11 is shut and open. So this is similar to something being open or closed. And then question 12. Question 12 will be abundant and meager. So this is looking at how much of something there is. Abundant is when there's lots of something, whereas meager is the opposite. It's something that is where there's very few, meager. So 13 is then profound and superficial. Question 14 is sturdy and frail. So something that's sturdy is very strong, whereas something that's frail is very weak. And then 15 will be important and insignificant. So yeah, this is looking at the importance of something, the significance of something, how important it is, and significant is a synonym to important. So you could say that insignificant is the antonym. Then we move on to question 16, which is loiter and hurry. So that's looking at how rushed you are or how much you want to do something. So loiter is when you're just, maybe you're just standing around, whereas a hurry, you might be running to something. Then question 17. 17 is squander and conserve. So if you're squandering, is the opposite to conserving. So squander is when something is often changing, whereas conserving, you're keeping it the same. Then question 18, it will be permit and forbid. So when you permit, you allow something to take place, whereas if you forbid, you're saying that it could never happen. Okay, now we're going to move on to percentages. So this is going to be maths. So a farmer has 240 animals, and 5 out of 12 of them are sheep. 40% of them are cows. So to find how many sheep the farmer has, we have to find 5/12 of 240. So how we can do that is first we can divide 240 by 12. So 240 divided by 12, we can do the bus stop method for this one. So that's where we write 240 here, and then 12 here. And we can see how many 12s go into 240. Well, how many 12s go into 2 first? There are none. How many in 24? There are 2. And then we have a remainder of 0. So our answer will be 20 sheep. Or then we do 20 multiplied by 5. Because it's 5/12 and it's 100. So the answer will be 100. Then we look at how many cows the farmer has, and this is 40% of 240. So how we can find this first is by finding 10%. So 10% will be equal to 240 divided by 10, because 240 is equal to 100%. And that'll equal to 24. And then we do 24 times 4 because it's 40 so 4 10%. And 24 times 4 will be equal to 96. And that leaves our answer as 96. So next we're going to be doing question 2, which is 25% of a number is 2.6, and what is that number? So 25%, as we already know, is 1 over 4, so all we have to do is 2.6 multiplied by 4. So 6 times 4 is 24, 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. And then we add back our decimal place, so the answer is 10.4. Then we do question 3. On a Black Friday, a book costs £7.20 and now it costs £8.10. What percentage increase does this represent? So how you do this is you look at the difference. So first we're going to look at the difference between £8.10 and £7.20. So £8.10 minus £7.20 will equal to 90p. And now we're looking at percentage increase. So what we have to do is we have to take out 0.9, and what we do with it is we divide it by £7.20. So we have 0.9 over £7.20. And what we can do is we can then multiply both by 10, so the scale is still the same, and then we have 9 divided by 72. So what we do first is we see how many 72s go into 9, which is 0. And then we add our decimal place and another 0. And how many 72s go into 91. This leaves us with a remainder of 18. And then we see how many 72s go into 180. And the answer to that will be 2, which gives us 144, with a remainder of 36. So then we add our 0, and we divide 360 by 72, which is equal to 5. And this gives a decimal of 0.125. But we need to multiply this by 100, which will give us, if we move our decimal place once to the right, twice to the right, it will give us 12.5%. So the answer to question 3 will be 12.5%. Next we do question 4, which is Julie has a box of different coloured ribbons. 12 are blue, 27 are yellow, 9 are red and 2 are green. So how many does she have altogether? This is a simple addition of 12 plus 27 plus 9 plus 2. So there. And if we just add that up, it will give us the answer of 50. So the answer to 4A will be 50. Okay, and then what percentage of them are green? So we know that 2 of them are green. So it will be 2 over 50. And we can easily convert this into something over 100 by multiplying by 2, so it gets 4. And then 4 divided by 100, well, we move the decimal place once to the left and twice to the left because there are 2 zeros. And this means that it is then a decimal of, then the percentage will be 4 over 100. Well, the fraction is 4 over 100. So that means that it's a percentage of 4%. Because the decimal would be 0.04. All you're doing is then multiplying by 100, which gives you 4. So here we have 4%, which is our answer to 4B. Okay, question 5. You go into a local bakery shop and you see the following items are on sale. For each item, calculate how much it will cost. So a donut originally costing 80p has been reduced by 20%. So you have to find the value of 20%, which will be 10% of 80p multiplied by 2. So 10% is equal to 8 because we're doing 80p divided by 10 because 80p is equal to 100%. So 10% is 8p. So 20% will be equal to 16p. So then we do 80 minus 16. And 80 minus 16 in simple column would be 64p. And that gives our answer to question 5, which is 64p. Okay, question 6. You go into a local bakery shop and you see the following items are on sale. For each item, calculate how much it will cost. So a pie originally costing £2 has been reduced by 12%, so we find what 12% is. Well, first we know what 10% is. 10% is equal to £2 divided by 10. So £2 divided by 10 will give us a value of 20p. So 20p is our 10%. So then we find what 2% is. So if 10% is 20p, and that's 10 divided by 5, then we're going to do the same thing to the 20. So because 10 is divided by 5, we divide 20 by 5. And now equal to 4p. Because 4 times 5 is 20. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So then we find what 12% is, which is equal to 20 plus 4. And that will be equal to 24. And then what we do is we do 24p, and then we do our £2 minus 24p, which will be equal to our answer, which is £1.76. Okay, now we're going to move on to question 7. Shading 25% of this shape. Well, we know that there are 8 squares, so out of 8, well, we know 25% is 1 over 4, so over 8, we are multiplying by 2, and that's equal to 2 over 8, so we shade in 2 squares. So that'll be here, and here you can shade in any 2 squares. Okay, in question 8. In a sale, prices have been reduced by 30%, and Irfan buys a carpet which is priced at £280 in the sale. What was the original price? So we know that £280 is equal to 70% of the total value. So what we can do is 70% is equal to £280. So then we find what 10% is. 10% will be equal to 280 divided by 7. And 280 divided by 7 is 40. So that will be equal to £40. So then we find what 30% is, because that's what it's been reduced by. And that will be 40 times 3, which is equal to £120. So then we do 280 plus 120. So 120 plus 280, which is equal to our answer, which is £400. So the answer to question 8 is £400. Then we look at question 9. Andrew earns £35,000 in a year and he gives 1%, that's 1% of his money to charity. So how much does he have left? So we need to find what 1% is. You can do this by dividing the number by 100. So £35,000 divided by 100 divided by 100 will mean that we're moving the decimal place back twice. So it is equal to £350. Then we do 35,000 minus 350, and that will equal to our answer, which for question 9 will be 34,650. So the 34,650 plus 350 would also equal £35,000. So remember to add your pound sign, and that's your answer. So question 10. In a test, Roger scored 12 marks. His percentage was 25%. How many marks was the test marked out of? So 12% is equal to a quarter, or 12 marks is equal to 1 quarter. So to find 4 over 4 is equal to a quarter over a quarter times 4, which is like doing 12 times 4. And 12 times 4 will be equal to 48. So the answer to question 10 will be 48. Okay, question 11. Even when the camel Charlie is thirsty, 84% of his weight is due to the water in his body. And after he drinks, his weight increases to 800 kilograms, and 85% of it is now due to the water in his body. So what is the weight which is not due to water in his body? And then what is the weight when he's thirsty? So first we'll look at this first part, the weight which is not due to the water in his body. So what we're going to look at is so given that it's not due to the water in his body, it's going to be 15%. So 15% of 800 kilograms should be our answer. So just checking that. Yes. So first we're looking at 15% of 800. So 15% of 800, well first we find 10%. So 10% will have a value, it's not right, 10% will be 80, and then 5% will be half of that, which is 40. So then 15% will be 80 plus 40. So 80 plus 40 is equal to 120. So the first part has an answer of 120 kilograms. Okay, next we are looking at the weight of Charlie when he is thirsty. So you know that it was his weight that is not due to water is 120 kilograms. And this goes from a value of, if it lets me write, a value of 15% to 16%. So what we do is we divide by 0.16 and we can increase this by a scale of 100. If we're to do the bus stop method, so that would then be 1, 2, 0, and then we add 2 zeros, and then the 16. So how many 16s are going to 120? That will be 7. And then we see that there's a remainder of 8. And then how many 16s are going to 80? That will be 5. And then 0. So the answer is 750 kilograms. Because that's the remaining weight when he isn't thirsty. That's the total. So question 12. A concert has sold 60% of its tickets for a particular night. 28 tickets remain unsold, and how many people can the concert hall hold in total? So given that 60% were sold and 28 were unsold, we know that 28 tickets is equal to 40%. So 40% is 28. And then we look at the total. So we can find 10% from this, which is equal to 2.8. Or no, which will be equal to 28 divided by 4, which is 7. Well, so 10% is equal to 28 over 4, which is 7. So then we do 7, which is 10%. So 100% will be 7 times 10, which is equal to 70. So the answer to question 12 will be 70. Then we work out 50% of 240. This is 240 divided by 2, which is 120. And that will be our answer for question 13. And then we look at question 14, which is 10% of 25, which will be £2.50 because we're moving our decimal place. So we can take our 25 and move the decimal place once to the left. And the answer will be £2.50. And then we're working out 25% of 48, which will be 48 divided by 5 because 25% is equal to 1/4. So 48 over 4 will give us the answer of 12. £12. Okay, now we move on to the next part, which is question 16. So a very greedy shopkeeper increased the price of a small chocolate sweet from 10p to £1, and now we have to find the percentage increase. So how we find this is we take out £1 and we find what the increase is from 10p. So £1, I'll write this in black, is equivalent to 100 pennies. So we subtract 10, and it is 90. So then we do 90, which is the increase, so our 90p, and we divide it by 10. So 90p divided by 10 is 9, and then we do 9 times 100 because it's a percentage, and that gives 900%. This is like multiplying by 9. So then 25% of 30% of 40% of 300. So first we have to find 40% of 300, and then 30% of that, and 25% of that. So 40% of 300, well, first we find what 10% is. So 10% will be equivalent to 300 divided by 10, which is 30, and then we multiply by 4 to get 40%. And that gives 120. And then we find 30% of that. So how we find 30% of 120, well, 10% of that will be equal to 12. And multiplied by 3 will be equal to 36. And then we find 25% of that, which is 36 over 4, which is our answer, which is for question 17, 9. For question 18, for part A, we're looking at, well, I drink 25% of my cardinal apple juice, and then what percent is left? So this is 100 minus 25. And the answer to 100 minus 25 is 75. And then if 34% of students walk to school, the percent that do not walk to school will be 100 minus 34, which is 66. So that will be our answer for 18B. Okay, next we're moving on to question 19. For the annual school musical, the hall contained 2 adult sections with 80 seats and each and 4 pupil sections with 100 seats each. On the opening night, the adult sections were 50% full and the pupil sections were 70% full. Work out the total number of people that attended the musical on the opening night. Okay, so given that the hall contained 2 adult sections with 80 seats each, we know that there are 160 seats available. And then we have to, so if we look at the adult part, I'll write this here. So for the adult part, we know that there are 160 seats, because that's 80 multiplied by 2, and we know that 50% were full. So divide by 2, because it's 50%, is equal to 80. Okay, so we know that there were 80 adults, and then we know that there are 4 pupil sections. That will be part P, which is which are 4 sections of 100, so that's 400. And then we know that they were 70% full. So first we find 10%, which is equal to 40. And then 70%, which will be that multiplied by 7, which is 280. So we know that our answer will be 280 plus 80. So 280 plus 80 is equal to 360. And then question 20. John has to travel 200 miles to get to his destination, and he stops for a drink after completing 30%. So how many miles has he completed? So what we have to find is 30% of 200. So 10% will be 20. And then 30% will be 20 multiplied by 3, which is equal to 60. So the answer for question 20 will be 60 miles. And then question 21. Mr. Rossi has a sale on fizzy drinks and he's reduced the prices by 30%. A can now costs 98 pence. So what did it cost before the sale? So we know that 98p is equal to 70% of the total value, because 100 minus 30 is equal to 70. So 10% will be equal to 98 divided by 7. 98 over 7 is equal to 14. So that's 14p is 10%. So 100% will be equal to 14p times 10. So 14p times by 10 will be equal to our answer, which is £1.40. Okay, now we're going to move on to NVR analogy. So this is looking at how we go from one shape to another, and then we apply the same rule to another shape. So question 1, our rectangle is rotating 90 degrees, and then our triangle is also rotating 90 degrees. And then our parallelogram is rotating 90 degrees and then reflecting on the x-axis line. So where this takes place in our options, well, it cannot be A and it cannot be B because our shape will change to white. Then it cannot be C because the triangle is not a right angle, because our triangle should not be at the top. And then it shouldn't be D because the triangle hasn't reflected on the x-axis. So the answer to question 1 will be E. Okay, then we look at question 2. So in this shape, our rhombus or our trapezium has reflected along the x-axis, which is this line. And what we're doing with that is the arrows are then pointing in the opposite direction, and all of the lines have been altered, as in they're pointing in the opposite direction. So given that, we know that our answer cannot be A because the parallelogram is facing in the incorrect direction. Because it's been reflected, the parallelogram should not be facing that way. And it should, well, no, it's not been reflected, but it should have the same orientation. So it should be facing the same way. And then we're looking at the way that our arrows are pointing. So in our shape, we have a line that is longer on the left side, or shorter on the left side and longer on the right side. So that means that our answer cannot be D and it cannot be A. Then we're looking at the direction of the line. So the line is not correct in E, but then in C it is also not because the arrows are coming from the center point. They should be coming from their own 2 points. So we can rule out C and say our answer is B. Then we look at question 3. So in question 3, we have 2 hexagons and the hexagons remain the same. And then the inside of the shape will reflect, but then the 2 lines will swap sides and the arrow will point in the opposite direction. So we can look at the way that our arrow points. So it cannot be A, it cannot be E. But looking at the arrow, it could still be B, C, or D. Then also looking at the line here, it can also be B, C, or D. So now we need to find another feature. So we can see that the triangle in the center will reflect. So that means that our answer can only be C, because in B it is not reflected the correct way. It's not reflected at all. So the answer will be C. Then we look at question 4. Question 4, the shape has been, well, the L shape has reflected. And then we can see that the tall rectangle with the square at the top has also been reflected and it hasn't moved. But then we can also, we can see that the shape has just reflected. Now what we should note here is the direction of the lines, as that could impact our answer too. But more importantly, we're going to look at which shape has reflected in the x-axis for our answer. So we know that that is the case for E. So in E, we can see that the shape has reflected in the x-axis and then the y. So it's almost rotated. Has it rotated? Yes, it has. It's rotated 180 degrees. So that's what's happening to our shape. It's rotating 180 degrees. So that means that our answer cannot be, well, it cannot be A, and neither can it be B. It still could be C, but it cannot be D. So now we need to find the difference between C and E, and we can see that's the direction of the lines. So in our example, we can see that the direction of the line will be swapped. So that means that it will not be C, and the answer will be E. Okay, question 5. So for question 5, we can see that the colour of our rectangle here will change. And then we can also see that, so we can see that the colour of each shape will change. And then what we're looking at is a reflection. So a reflection on the x-axis, and then the colours change from black to white. So given that, our answer cannot be A, and neither can it be C because the colour hasn't changed. It cannot be D due to the reflection, and it's not E. It's not E because it's not E due to the colour change. The colours haven't changed in E, so the answer will be B.
So question 6 or 59 on your booklet. This one is, if we look at what's changing from left to right, this top bit seems to move it down, okay? You seem to lose this circle and everything moves down, alright? So if we just do the same thing here, what we would do is we'd lose this bottom arrow, meaning there would be 1, 2, 3, 4 arrows. Everything else should move down. So look at which option has 4 arrows. You can cancel out all of them that don't have that white circle on it. And you're left with option D, which has 4 arrows. It's got everything else at the top. And then the final add-on is this new arrow just gets added to the top. And that leaves you with option D.
And here is our shape is reflecting. So given that, it could still be any of the answers. But then we need to look at the arrow. So the direction of the arrow needs to be the opposite, and the arrow should be moving from the bottom left to the top right, so like this. So it cannot be B, it could be C, but it cannot be D, and it could be E. So now we need to find another unique feature. So looking at our shapes, we can see that the difference is in the pattern, is it? The patterns seem to be very similar. So we can see that the patterns are very similar. They still seem very, very much the same. So considering that, I'd say that all of our remaining options, could be an answer with this one because of the pattern. We can't really differentiate much with this one. But yeah, okay, so yeah, we can leave our answer as that. I'd suggest, yeah, A, C, or E would all seem to be valid options there, but that's probably a question error by the looks of it. So we'll move on to question 7. Question 7, we can see the triangle, the circle in the center will become larger, and then that means that our diamond in our shape here will become the larger shape. So given that, we would expect it to not be A, C, or E. And then we're also looking at colour. So we can see the shape at the top, which in our case, it's a triangle, but in our case it's a circle. It should be black. So the answer should be B. Okay, question 8. We can see that the triangle will reflect and then change colour, so we can expect our shape at the top to reflect and then become black. So we're going to cross out C and E. And then we're going to look at the shape at the bottom, which remains unchanged. So we can expect it to not be D. Now we can see that the size is the difference in our shapes. So we can see that in B, the shape is smaller than A. So what we can say about this is that in our options, the shape becomes larger. So given that, our answer would be A. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next part. For question 9, is once again an analogy, and we can see that the large semicircle is duplicated. So there's 2 of it now. So considering that, it could still be any of our options, A, B, C, D, or E. And then the black line will remain, so we can expect our line to remain. And through that, we can cancel out B, but we could still keep our other shapes. No, we would cancel out C because it's not in the middle. And then we can see that the semicircle at the top will then become a vertical line on the side, so it cannot be A. But now we need to identify the difference between D and E. And we can see that this is the thickness. So D is thinner, so it will not be that because it must maintain the same thickness as our original shape. So our answer will be E. Then question 10. So in question 10 we can see the oval is duplicated and then the circle is duplicated and circles are added to the top and the bottom of the shape. So we're going to duplicate our triangle too. So our triangle will then, so it cannot be A, and neither can it be B because they aren't overlapping, and it can't be E. So now we need to identify the difference between D and B, and this is the line at the top and bottom of the shape, so we can cancel out D, and the answer will be B. Okay, question 11, we can see that the overlapping areas, or the areas that aren't overlapping in our star, will become black. So given that, our answer will be A, because the areas that aren't overlapping between the 2 triangles have became black. So question 12. Question 12, we can see that it becomes a circle with our 2 curved lines at the top and bottom, and we can see the shape on the left becomes the outer shape and it's dotted, and the shape on the inside becomes black. So we can expect a circle, so all of our options are still valid. But then we can expect a triangle on the outside, so we can cancel out A. Then the triangle should be dotted, so we can cancel out C. And then our pentagon on the inside should be black, so we can cross out D and E, and our answer to question 12 will be B. Okay, 13. So 13, we're looking at pattern. We can see that the pattern of our shapes is what is changing. So we can see that vertical lines become horizontal lines become vertical. So we can look at that first, and that will be what cancels out A, B, C, and D, because we're looking at vertical lines or horizontal lines, and they become vertical. So our answer will be E. Then in 14 we have a semicircle, and this becomes a reflected semicircle that overlaps another semicircle in the same orientation as our original one. So just as I wait for this to load. Okay. Now what we're going to expect is our rectangle with another rectangle overlapping. So considering that, for question 14, our answer should have two overlapping rectangles, and that will give the answer of that will give the answer of D. In fact, I drew this incorrectly. Oh no, it will give the answer of A, because we have this, and then the lower shape will then join at the same height. So our answer will be A. Then for question 15, we are looking at a reflected shape on the x-axis, which is then unchanged after it's reflected. So just reflected in the x-axis. So given that, question 15, the shape is reflected in the it's reflected in the x-axis. Yes. Okay, so considering that, question 15 cannot be A or E, so it can still be B, C, or D, and now we're just looking at the reflection. So it cannot be C because of the parallelogram, and then it cannot be D because of the direction of the arrow. So the answer will be B. Question 16 is looking at an oval that remains unchanged, but the colour changes. So it changes from black to white. So looking at this, we can expect a colour change to black because it goes from black to white to grey, or it will go from black to white and then white to grey, and then grey will turn to black. So we can cross out B, C, and D. And now we can look at the shapes inside. So we can see that there's still 3 triangles and 2 squares. So we can still expect 3 circles and 4 diamonds. And that is only present for question 16 in, that is only present in option E. So our answer will be E. Next, we look at question 17, which is a reflection in the y-axis. Yeah, it's a reflection. Yeah, reflection in the y-axis. So considering this, it could be A, it cannot be B, C, or D, or E, so the answer is A. You can imagine a y-axis there and it will be reflected. So question 18. The circle has 5 lines and then there's a pentagon, so we can expect a square, so it cannot be B, D, or E. And then the triangle on the inside, well, it will be a larger shape, so it cannot be C, and the answer will be A. So question 18 is A. Then for question 19, we can see that our shape has a triangle at the bottom, and the lined rectangle then almost squishes it, and the semicircle is then added to the top, and the rectangle is added to the bottom. Okay, so we're doing the exact same thing. So we can expect a rectangle at the bottom, which is in all of our options, and then we can also expect a lined cutout square. So a semicircle has been cut out of the square, so it cannot be A. So then we can expect the 2 shapes at the bottom, so we can expect the cross to be on the top, or the circle to be on the cross to be on the top, and the square to be on the bottom. So with that, we can cross out C, D, and E. So our answer will be, for 19, will be B. Question 20. For question 20, we have a rectangle with a lined oval on the inside, and then 2 lined ovals on the inside. So this is then almost being taken out, and then the pattern of it is being swapped. So we can expect the oval on the outside to remain the same, and then we can expect a lined rectangle on the outside and a dotted rectangle on the inside. So looking at 21, it cannot be A because the shape on the bottom should remain lined, and neither can it be D. It cannot be E because of that, and it cannot be C. So the answer will be B. Okay, question 22. We're seeing that our shape has been rotated 90 degrees clockwise, and then the smaller version of it has been reflected in the y-axis and put inside. So we can expect that our shape will look like this. With a thicker line on this side. So for 22, we can cross out A, C, and D. And now we're looking at the inside, and we can see that the thicker side should be on the opposite side, which a thicker line should be on the opposite side. So the answer should be E. Then we're looking at
Okay, so I'm going to take over from Ethan for a bit for the last 4 questions of NVR. So the first question over here, question 76, where you can see from the left to the right, there's one thing that's changing. That's the square in the middle. So the square in the middle is getting cut in half. So what we can assume is going to happen to this one is the circles are going to get cut in half, which leaves us with A as the answer. I can't really circle it, but there you go. You can see A is the answer for that. For question 77, if we're looking at the change here, well, first of all, the outside shape is getting bold, so I'm going to make that change to this one. Let's have a look, sorry. Okay, it looks like that's not the case, because there's no option that has the outside shape going bold. So what I'm going to do is look at what else it is. So I can see that it's actually the line thickness, or whatever the line shading is, goes from the outside to the inside. So you can see that it swaps, right? So that means the outside one must have dashed and the inside one must be straight. So that actually cancels out all of them apart from C. Now we don't actually have to do anything else. That is the rule. We can have a look at what else is actually changing just to see if we're completely right. Well, the other thing that's changing is the middle shape is going from a square into a diamond, so it's sort of squeezing inwards and rotating as well. So you can imagine the square rotating and also getting squeezed. Well, if we look at what the rectangle might do, if we rotate it a bit and squeeze it, well, all of them have the same rectangle shape anyway, so that's not too big of a deal. I don't think that's a repeat question. Yeah, so that's alright. And the last two, so question 78 and 79. Let's look at question 78. There's a smiley face on top of the pentagon. And the next one is a smiley face. Is a pentagon, it's basically just reflected. So this shape is just reflected downwards, right? And it's placed like halfway along it, right? So we can already eliminate A because it's not reflected downwards. We can eliminate C because it hasn't got the same sort of shape at the top. Now we're left with a few here. So you don't want to get mixed up here. You want to make sure that first of all, we're keeping this shape the same, right, on this change. So that means this shape has to be the same. So it has to be going like this, right? So the wide area has to be on the top. B doesn't have that, so it can't be B either. So it could either be D or E at this point. We've eliminated the rest of them. What I'm looking at is I can already see that E actually has a different shape on the bottom of it. So that means it must be D. So if we cancel out the rest. So finally, question 79 here. First of all, the middle shape changes from a square to a hexagon. So what I'm seeing there is it goes from 4 to having 6. So what I'm assuming might happen is this one might go from 3 to 5, right? Because there's a +2 on this. So I see hexagons here, so I'm going to cancel out the hexagon, and I'm assuming it's going to be a pentagon in the middle. What else changes? Well, the white circle turns into a black circle, so I'm going to assume the white square is going to turn into a black square. So that again cancels out all of them. So now we've got C or E left, and well, it doesn't say anything about the pentagon or the shape actually being flipped. Although it could have been flipped, I think it's safer to go with C. Because yeah, I'd stick with C. It seems like to be the safer bet there. While I think someone, if you gave E as your answer, I don't think you'd be faulted because these are all symmetrical shapes. So you could argue that this was flipped, right? We're going to put the default answer as C. If you put E down, you can still mark yourself right. But just be wary that these two are the same shape. Just one's pointing up and one's pointing down. Question 80 here. Was the spelling mistake in this sentence? Well, the 12th and 13th entries in the dictionary were in an incorrect order. Dictionary, a lot of people might think that looks wrong, but that is the correct spelling. 12th should actually have an F rather than a V. Question 81. John suffered from some light bruising on his thigh, but otherwise escaped unhurt. So again, some people might be confused by suffered, but if you know the correct spelling, it's actually that, so there is no mistake there. And apart from that, there is no other mistakes in there, so actually the answer is E here. There were no mistakes, or none, right? So 82. Zach wished to accompany his wife to the doctor, but she preferred to go alone. You can see this looks a bit weird and looks a bit wrong. preferred should only have one F, and it should have two R's. Question 83. I can already see it immediately. Equipment should definitely only have one P. Question 84. And Dean's stomach rolled as the small boat lurched violently at the stormy waves. I'm not seeing any initial mistakes in this. Yep, I'm going to go with none for this one as well. So question 85. The designer attempted to create a collection which corresponded with the season. Now, corresponded should have two R's, so that will be the mistake here. Okay, question 86. Check for spelling mistakes in this short passage. So this is actually a whole paragraph this time. However, they've been separated out into lines, and you have to say if there's a mistake in the line or not. So first of all, initially, that should be a T, so that is already the first mistake in question 86. Question 87, they had thought that planning it would be a simple process, but there were so many practicalities. Right? So there's no mistakes in this line, so I'm going to put none here. Practicalities is spelt wrong though. That should be like this. Practicalities, right? So this is wrong. The E is wrong there. And question 89, whether they would be able to find affordables. This should have a double F, affordable accommodation. In a week and after a cursory internet search, they had found most hotels. So a lot of you won't know what this means. You should definitely use a dictionary or look it up. And obviously when you do that, you'll figure out that it should be spelt as cursory, right? But also you need to understand what the definition of that is. So let me just pull that up. So you can see here it means hasty and therefore not thorough or detailed. And if you didn't know what that meant, you should definitely note that down in like a separate vocab book, and make sure that if this word comes up in the actual exam, you get the right answer, right? So and you can also actually use this in your creative writing if you have any. So cursory, remember that word. Same idea with any of these words, right? If you're spelling them wrong, first of all, it's probably because you're not using them that much when you're writing, but also I think the best way is to keep a vocab book and write it down. Obviously that forces you to spell it right, but also write the definition next to it so you know what it means. Question 91. Most hotels were totally full, and Sam regarded this unfortunate news as absolute catastrophe. Now, this one is a bit of a red herring. A lot of people think this is spelt right. But catastrophe should actually have an E at the end, even though it's P, like it sounds like it should have a Y. And I've just pulled this up to sort of show you. So how it used to be spelt is with a Y, and now if you search it up anywhere, it will at most tell you that it's supposed to be spelled with an E. Okay, question 92. Now we're in choose the best word. So we've got 5 options here and we have to fill in the blank. So he something to have told you that conceded the fireman. So he should have not have told you that. Well, that doesn't make sense. He should have, or he should have told you that. Well, no, it should have been should have. That would have worked. He oughtn't, oughted or oughtn't without an apostrophe. Or this isn't actually correct English to have no apostrophe, and he oughted to have told you that doesn't make sense. It's not an actual word. So oughtn't to have told you that is the correct one, and that basically means he shouldn't have told you that. It's just another way of saying that. So the prisoner of war longed something, his freedom. So longed for his freedom is the one that makes the most sense. None of the other ones match. Betty thought that the piece of music was different anything she had heard previously. Different in, by, with, about. Well, these ones don't work. Different from anything she had previously. That works. There was something. So there's something, many possible explanation. Well, if it's many, right, it can't be was, right? Was is for something that is singular. So if there's many possible explanations, it's going to have to be were. There were many possible explanations for the bizarre set of circumstances. But actually, this one it would make more sense in the context, but the reason why we can't go with that is because it doesn't have an apostrophe, and it should have an apostrophe if you're going to say weren't, right? So, the red fox was distinct from the others, not just something colour, but also in behaviour. Well, not just by colour is the one that immediately stands out. Veronica from Dover to Calais. So what did she do from Dover to Calais? Swam. Veronica swam from Dover to Calais. Or had swam, swim, or swimmed. Well, these ones are definitely out. This is in the present tense. That doesn't work. Swimmed is incorrect. It's not the right way to say that. So now we've got Veronica swam from Dover to Calais. That's not correct English. We should have a had in front of it. So if she had done something. And for had swam, from Dover to Calais. The only difference here, right, is if you're going to choose swum, or you're going to use the past tense of swum with a U, that will have to have had in it in front of it. So Veronica had swum from Dover to Calais. That works, right? When you say had swam, that doesn't work. If you said just swam, Veronica swam from Dover to Calais, that works. So we're actually left with one option, which is the answer, which is had swum from Dover to Calais. Okay, a something of buffaloes descended. So it's going to be some sort of group of buffaloes, and you obviously need to know what word is used to describe a group of buffaloes here. And so shoal is for school is for fish. I believe shoal is also for fish. A pride is like a pride of lions. A gaggle is used to describe crows, so like a gaggle of crows. By process of elimination, if you know the other ones, and just by common sense, herd makes the most sense for buffaloes. Definitely use herd for sheep as well. I think flock. Flock is for birds, but it's a good idea to get familiar with these as well. Anyway, question 99. There are 5 options here. King. So if I something king. Well, if I were king. If I is king, doesn't work. If I am king, well, that would work, but not but this section is in past tense, so proclaimed, right? So this can't be in present, right? If I were king, if I be king, if I will be king. So none of these work because they're all in present, so it has to be were, which is the one in past tense. That children must something play all day. That children... I'd abolish... so we have to make sure that we read this. I'd abolish schools so that children could play all day. So it wouldn't make sense in the context. Will also, I don't think, makes as much sense in the context as well, because there's no way you can force children to play. Must, again, doesn't make sense, and neither does shall. So this one is more about context, whereas all of these make sense grammatically. The context works best with could. So next, his class cheered, but Miss Reed, George's teacher, just smiled and shook something head. So Miss Reed is a woman. It's not going to be his. Our head. Well, it's not two people, right? It's not personal pronoun. Miss Reed shook their head. Well, there's no reason to use the third person in that sense if you've got her name right there, so it should be her head. After Ed a marathon, he decided to... Okay, after Ed a marathon. Well, it would be the past tense, because you can see it says this is already in the past tense, right? You can also try it one by one. So after Ed running a marathon, that doesn't make sense. After Ed runs a marathon, that does make sense, but the second bit doesn't work. After Ed ran a marathon, that does work. Run, that's present, and this is also not the correct past tense version. Triathlons, decided to try out triathlons instead. He started training for his first competition week. So this is the only one in past tense, so that's going to be the right answer. Competition last week. He something nervous as... Okay, so he will feel nervous as the competition approaches. Or he felt nervous as the competition approach is. Well, that doesn't work because this is in present tense, and that would be in past. That wouldn't work, right? He feel, well, that doesn't work. He feeling nervous. He was feeling nervous as the competition approaches. So then none of those work because they're in the past tense. This one works because it's in the future. He will feel nervous as the competition approaches, right? But he knows he can win. There we go. Because none of the other ones work if you try them one by one there. Alright, question 106. Find any grammar mistakes. Okay, attention. Major Tan bellowed. All the troops in the crumbling barracks leapt. Well, there's not anything that I see here immediately, so I'm going to say none. To his feet. So all the troops in the barracks leapt to his feet and saluted smartly. Okay, so this is the wrong version of his. I mean, we can't use his because it's a group of people that we're talking about, so it should be their. Leapt to their feet, right? So that's going to be the mistake there, the grammar mistake there. If we go to the next one, the major began prowling the ranks, probing, so a mistake to penalise. So that really doesn't make sense. So the major began prowling the ranks, probing, so a mistake to penalise. Well, let's think of what we can replace that with to make it make sense. That will let us know where to actually put where the grammar mistake actually is. So the major began prowling the ranks, probing, so a mistake to penalise. Probing for a mistake to penalise. So I think that should be for. So what that means is he's looking for a mistake, so he can penalise them. So should be the mistake, or the grammar mistake there. He could not find one. Every soldier was very well. And the reason why this is a grammar mistake is because it's a preposition. Okay, so every soldier was very well presented, and the major knew that they must have spent the night before. So immediately, I'm pretty sure must of isn't not the right word. It should be must have spent, right? And I think a lot of people get confused with this because when you're speaking in real English, it sounds similar, but must have is the right one, or must have, right? Must have with an apostrophe, right? So that's going to be the mistake there. 110. Preparing for this inspection. Good work, he grumbled, making his way out. There's no mistakes in that one. Okay, now on to the punctuation. So, in these sentences there are some punctuation mistakes, either one or no mistake. If there are no mistakes, you have to put an N, right? Okay, let's get straight into the first one. Why don't you play outside today? Suggested Tom's aunt. So what we have to do is we have to find the punctuation mistake and then choose the option based on which sort of box it is in. So if it was B, that means the punctuation mistake is in this area. I can see it already. Today, right? There's a comma there. If you're gonna put any sort of punctuation mark at the end of a quotation, it's gonna have to be like a full stop or a question mark or exclamation mark, but not a comma, because that's indicating that it's going to continue. So the answer here is C. 112. even the best, most expensive detergent, comma, couldn't remove the mud stains. So here, whenever you have, if you're going to put a comma here to end the clause, even the best, most expensive detergent, that would mean that this sentence would have to make sense on its own, and it doesn't. If you just say even the best, most expensive detergent without anything else, that doesn't make any sense on its own. The reason why you're allowed a comma here is because that's more of a list, so you're saying best and most expensive, so you're using a comma rather than and, whereas a comma here would be to end the clause, and that doesn't work, so there shouldn't actually be a comma here. It should go best most expensive detergent couldn't remove the mud stains, which is why C is the mistake here. But because we've joined it with an and, I don't think there's any need, so this is going to be an N as well. Caitlin had carelessly lost Asaf's charger, his brand new one. Okay, I can see one already here. If you're going to use brackets and not put a full stop afterwards, that's going to be an issue, right? So it should definitely be T. I mean, every sentence should end with a full stop, but it just sticks out like a sore thumb when you have brackets there as well. Okay, 115. I'd book first because the restaurant is so popular, especially on Fridays. Alright. What I'm thinking here is there are no commas here, and I feel like there should be. I'd book first because the restaurant is so popular, especially on Fridays. So this should be a separate section of the sentence, and there should be a pause there. So comma, and the answer there should be C. Same sort of idea here. If you're going to add an added clause here, where you're describing, you're basically adding on to the first sentence, so this stands alone. This is a standalone sentence. I'd book first because the restaurant is so popular. You don't need to add this on. If you're going to add this on, you have to have a comma before it, which means you have to put C as the issue. Okay, 116. Looking through my parents' music collection, I was amazed to see so many CDs. Okay, looking through my parents' music collection. Well, here we go. There should be an apostrophe there. If parents are possessing that music collection, that should definitely be B. If we hadn't seen the road sign, we would have ended up in Wales. Apostrophe there. Should be A. That's pretty simple. Question 118, the final one in this section. We were lucky to win the tickets to see the Nutcracker this winter. Alright. Now, winter does not have to be capitalized. Winter can be written like this. The only thing that needs to be capitalized in sort of that sense is April. So months should be capitalized. Seasons do not have to be capitalized. So D there will be the mistake, or the grammar mistake.
Most people know that certain animals can be very, very smart. Dogs can be trained to obey commands and recognize situations. Dolphins and whales help each other out and get sad when bad things happen to their friends. Orangutans can interact with humans and even recognize themselves in a mirror, very rare among non-human animals. But did you know that certain birds show signs of high intelligence as well? One famous example was Alex the African grey parrot. Alex was sold as a pet to a scientist named Irene Pepperberg. Dr. Pepperberg decided that she wanted to teach Alex how to speak English words. Since most African greys can speak a little bit, this is not unusual. What made Alex special was what his words revealed about his mind. Alex understood how to add up small numbers. He could look at very different examples of the same items, such as a large brass key and a small silver key, and correctly label them both as keys. He showed empathy with Dr. Pepperberg, telling her "I'm sorry" when she seemed frustrated or sad. He even created new words, such as when he saw an apple for the first time, he called it bannery, a combination of banana and cherry, two words he already knew. Unfortunately, Alex passed away unexpectedly when he was 31 years old, and most African greys live to be around 60. While Dr. Pepperberg continues to work with parrots, none of them have ever proven to be quite as clever as Alex. Some skeptics say this is evidence that birds are not so smart after all, or that Dr. Pepperberg's research with Alex was flawed. Whatever the reason, it is clear that Alex was a special bird. Maybe one day science will find another bird like him, and we will see just how intelligent birds can be. So question 1, according to the passage, which of the following animals are widely considered to be intelligent? So 1, dogs, 2, elephants, or 3, whales? Well, we know that it said that dogs and whales are intelligent, so that means that our answer will be B. Okay, which of the following statements about Dr. Pepperberg is true according to the passage? So we can see that it does not say she was a veterinarian. It does not say that she was a scientist at Oxford University. It does say that she works with many birds, not just Alex, but it doesn't say that she didn't have any experience before Alex. So the answer will be C. Number 3. The passage mentions keys to suggest that categorizing distinct objects together can be a sign of intelligence. It is typical for animals to recognize the similarities between keys. Alex could recognize which key would allow him out of his cage. Or Dr. Pepperberg only used one example of an object to teach Alex a new word. So the answer to question 3 will be that categorizing distinct objects together can be a sign of intelligence, because it's saying that he recognized an apple as a banana and cherry, or as how he recognized that the two keys were both keys. So categorizing distinct objects together can be a sign of intelligence. And that's what makes our answer A. Then, question 4. Why did he first refer to an apple as a bananary? He wanted a banana or cherry as a treat instead of an apple. He combined the words randomly, or he wanted to make Dr. Pepperberg laugh, or he didn't know the word for apple, so he mixed two known words to describe an unknown object, and the answer for this will be D. Next, based on its use in paragraph 4, it can be understood that the word skeptic belongs to which of the following groups? So scholar, genius, sage, no. Doubter, unbeliever, critic, it could be that. Follower, disciple, fan, not really. Enemy, opponent, bully, no. So the answer will be B. Skeptic is something similar to a doubter, an unbeliever, or a critic. It's a synonym of these words. Next, question 6. The author of the passage seems to think that Alex was the smartest bird that has ever lived, Pepperberg is a fraud, or more research is needed, or skeptics killed Alex in order to silence Pepperberg. So we know that more research is needed on the topic of animal intelligence. Next, we move on to the next comprehension. So this one is about cat owners. So cat owners often debate whether it is best for cats to stay in or go out. Some believe you should keep your cat indoors at all times, and others think your cat should be allowed to go outside when it wants to. Owners who think your cat should stay inside argue that it's dangerous for the cats to roam outside, and allowing cats outside also increases the chance that they'll be exposed to diseases like feline leukemia. In addition to being concerned about the health of their cat, these cat owners do not like the uninvited guests of outdoor cats. The guests outdoor cats may bring home. For example, fleas, fleas that can jump on a cat outside, hitch a ride inside, and multiply once inside your home. All outdoor cats also have a tendency to bring home treats for their owners, like a dead mole on the doorstep or worse, on your pillow. But people on the other side of the issue argue that it is cruel to keep cats indoors. How many hours does an indoor cat spend staring out the window, watching birds or the cars on the street? These owners say it's unnatural for animals never to go outside. They also claim that without exercise, cats will grow fat and lazy. Sleeping on the sofa, once cats get a taste of the outdoors, they usually are no longer content to stay in all day. To these owners, this proves it is wrong not to let cats go outside. If you do decide to let your cat outdoors, there are steps you can take to increase its safety. Try to bring the cat in at night, when it is more likely to be hit by a car or attacked by animals. And all cats, whether indoor or outdoor, should wear a collar with identifying information in case they get lost. Okay, question 1. According to the author, some owners do not allow their cats outdoors because it is too dangerous. The cats can be exposed to diseases. Cats can get enough exercise indoors. So we can see that 1 and 2 are true, so the answer will be B. And then question 2. In the paragraph, the author uses the word treats to describe dead animals, unwanted fleas, dangerous diseases, or tasty foods. We know that it's dead animals like the dead mole. And then question 3. In paragraph 3, the author writes, how many hours does an indoor cat spend staring out the window watching birds or the cars on the street? This statement intends to prove that indoor cats are entertained by looking outside, show that if cats were allowed out, they might kill birds, ask why cats spend so much time looking out the window, or suggest that cats would probably be happier outdoors. Well, we know that it's D, because it shows that they want to be outside. So that's B, A, D, and now we move on to question 4. In paragraph 3, the author writes, once cats get a taste of the outdoors, they usually are no longer content to stay in all day. As used in paragraph 3, which of these people can actually be described as content? So Michael, who's happy visiting the same beach every year. John, who feels trapped in a job he has to do but does not enjoy. Susan, who wants to travel to all 7 continents before she dies. Or Liz, who is excited about a party that she cannot concentrate on work. So we know that the answer will be A, because Michael is already happy with what he has, whereas John is unhappy, and Susan and Liz, they haven't done what's made them happy yet. So when you're content, you're happy with what you have. So in question 5, in the final paragraph, the author settles the debate, gives some advice, chooses a side, or provides a warning. So we know that he gives some advice, like putting on a collar or taking the cat in at night time. And then people on both sides of the issue presented in this passage apparently believe that it is most important to keep their cat safe. Cats make better pets than dogs. The cat should be allowed to do what is most natural, or they should be doing what is best for their, I think that's cat. So what they're doing is that, they're saying that, keeping their cats safe might not be the case for people that let their cats outside, because that's not explicitly mentioned. Cats make better pets than dogs? No. Their cat should be allowed to do what is most natural? No. So the answer will be D. They're doing what is best for their cat. People on the outside, like people that let their cats outside, are keeping their cats, natural. But then people that keep their cats inside might be trying to, keep them safe. So now we're going to read Prometheus. The Greeks believed that this earth, on which we live, was once a great heap of matter, in which land and water and air were all mixed together. there was no light or life anywhere except among the gods in heaven. After a while, the gods agreed to put this heap into shape and order. They separated the air from the earth and water. The air, being lightest, flew up and formed the sky. The earth, being heavy, sank down. But the water flowed all around it and held it up, so that it would not sink entirely away. Then the gods gave form to the earth. They lifted the mountains, and that left valleys. They dug paths into rivers. They sent islands in the sea, and made the world look as it now does. They also fashioned the sun and the moon and stars, and these gave light. The mountains were soon covered with young trees, grass, and flowers grew on the plains. Fish were in the sea, birds flew in the air, and animals moved about on the dry land. All these living creatures were made by two lower gods called Titans. Their names were Prometheus and Epimetheus. They also created man, nobler than the humans, because he walks upright and towards heaven, while the other creatures walk on 4 feet and look downward to the ground. Epimetheus did the work, and Prometheus was the overseer. The animals had different gifts. The ox was strong, the horse could run fast, the owl was wise, the fox was cunning, the eagle had wings. Lions and bears had teeth and claws to fight with. The snake had poison to kill its victims or its enemies. Birds had feathers and beasts had fur or wool or hair to keep them warm. Even oysters and clams had little houses of shell in which they could shut themselves up tight. But man had no feathers or fur or wool or shell, and not a great deal of hair. When his turn came to receive some special gift, there was nothing for him. Though he was the noblest of all creatures, he was really weakest and most hopeless of them all. The two Titan brothers stood and looked at each other. "What shall we do now?" said Epimetheus. "Everything has been given out. Is nothing left?" said Prometheus. "Nothing at all," answered his brother. They looked all around, but no help came. Then they looked up at the shining sun. "Oh, I know," said Prometheus. "Stay here and wait for me." "Where are you going?" asked his brother. "You will know when I come back," said Prometheus. Then he went to the highest mountain and climbed to the top. There Athene, the goddess of wisdom, met him and branched him the rest of the way up to the sky. On the mountain top, he had broken a branch from a pine tree. This he took with him, and as the sun came driving by in his chariot of fire, Prometheus touched the branch to the burning wheels. The green leaves snapped and crackled in the flame, and the pitchy wood took fire. Prometheus hurried back from the sky and ran down the mountain. All the way he took care to keep the branch burning. When he reached Epimetheus, he said, "Hurry and get a pile of branches. Here is a fire from heaven. This shall be our one best gift to man. By this he shall conquer all the other creatures and be master of earth and sea and air." Epimetheus ran and gathered branches and piled them in a heap. Prometheus threw his torch among them. The twigs caught fire at once, and soon there was a bright, roaring, cheerful, comfortable blaze. Then the brothers called the man and said, "Come here and be warm," for the night was falling, and the air was growing chilly. The man stretched out his hands toward the fire and laughed. "This is not a plaything," said the Titans. "You must keep it as your servant, and be very careful that you never let it become your master. Use it rightly, and it will make you ruler over everything in the world." The man was glad, and kept the fire burning. Soon he learned to cook his food instead of eating it raw. He found stones which would melt, and which we all call ores: lead ore, tin ore, zinc ore, copper ore, gold ore, silver ore. He melted gold and silver, and with stone hammers pounded out rings and bracelets and earrings, which we wore. He melted copper and zinc together to make bronze, and he hammered into spearheads, which he fastened on long sticks. Then he could fight the lion and the bear, keeping out of reach of their claws. With these spears, he could also catch fish. Afterwards, he made bronze hooks for fishing. He learned the use of the bow, and tipped his arrows with bronze. He could shoot flying birds, or running deer, and crawling snakes. He made bronze bits for horses and axes for cutting down trees and plowshares for tilling the ground. He had much better tools of every kind than the stones he used at first. Long afterwards, men found out how to melt and shape iron, which was better and more useful than bronze. The fire from heaven gave men mastery over every animal, and made them rulers of the earth. So in question 1, what do you think the word heap means in the context of line 1? So heap means mass. Then in question 2, what did the earth supposedly look like in lines 1 to 3? It looked like not mud and water, not darkness too, not light. Could be abstract elements, or land and sea. The answer to this one will be D, abstract elements. And then what's another word for except? So another word for except could be apart from. And then which description best fits the way that the gods separated the matter? So this would be that the air moved up to form sky. Gods decided to look the way they liked. The water flowed everywhere. The elements separated logically. Yep. Or the earth moved down to form the land. Well, this will be D because it summarizes everything. Next is question 5. So it's asking, why has the writer put some information between hyphens in line 5? The answer to this one will be C, to explain the main clause of the sentence in more detail. And then 6, fashioned the sun and moon and stars. Which of the following words is closest in meaning to fashioned? The answer to question 6 will be created out of the available materials. Then 7, what is said to have happened to the water on Earth? So this one, we're looking at, it did not sink underground, it did not evaporate, it did not flow under the land, didn't stay in the air, but it did flow around the land and support it. So what is meant by describing the Titans as lower gods? So this is saying that they were not the most powerful gods. Which verb tense is being used when the mountains are described as soon covered in young trees in line 10? So soon covered in young trees is a past participle. So rather than being past tense, it's saying like soon covered in young trees, because you're referring to the past, but it's still saying like referring to the time change. So question 10, why does the text say humans are nobler than animals? It's because we walk on 2 feet. And this is often about looking at which other options it cannot be. So what were Epimetheus and Prometheus's roles? Well, their roles were Epimetheus worked and Prometheus supervised. And then, which of these is the best definition for the word gifts? In line 16. So this is going to be D, abilities. And then, what is meant by describing the fox as cunning for question 13? It is not a bad hunter, could be skillful, could be clever, not really selfish, not really good at catching prey. So this will be skillful. And then what is the literary technique that is being used when the narrator says little houses of shell? So the answer to question 14 will be houses of shell. The answer to this one will be so line 20. Let's have a look. Clams had little houses of shell. Okay. So this will be a metaphor. Okay. So question 15. What type of words are the following? So fast, wise, warm, and tight. So question 15. This will be, well, they're all adjectives. So C. And then which line best summarizes the Titans' feelings about the work they have done on Earth at this point? Okay, so let's have a look at our lines. So we have the option of 22 to 26. Okay. So we can see, okay. Let's just check back. It seems like 25. Yeah, 25. Okay, so question 17 next. How does Prometheus capture the fire that he gives to humanity? So question 17 will be D, because he lights the branch on the sun god's chariot. Which description best fits the character of Athene? Okay, so Athene in this case has been very clever. She's presented positively and each of the other options are quite negative. What does the narrator mean by pitchy wood in line 33? Okay, so by pitchy wood, so the pitchy wood to fire, so this one will be wood filled with tree resin. Okay. Which of these words is the best synonym for conquer? So for question 20, this will be, so if you're conquering something, the answer to this one, okay. The answer to this one will be quell. Quell is a synonym of conquer. So night was falling in line 41 is, okay, which literary technique is being used? So this one is a night was falling, so a metaphor. What kind of person is Prometheus presented as? Okay, 22, so generous. Okay, now we move on to question 23. what type of word is rightly on line 44. So rightly in line 44, we can just check the context of it. So use it rightly and it will make you the ruler of everything in the world. Okay, so this one will be an adverb. Use it rightly. How would you best summarize the human's experience in the passage? So this will be innovating and growing. What technique is being used in the phrase ores? Lead or tin or zinc or copper or gold or silver or in line 48 to 49. This one is going to be when it's listing and it's asyndetic, so that'll be A. So 26, we're looking at what does the human do with his ability to melt metals. So we know that they do make jewelry, but it's not necessarily through melting metals. So and they also create weapons, but yeah, overall they do fashion useful items, and they don't categorize them and they don't learn to combine them. So this will be fashion useful items. So they're making useful items. Then 27. Which of these words is closest in meaning to tilling as it is used in the passage? So for 27, this will be tilling, then will be ploughing. And that seems to be the end. So thank you very much for watching. You've been watching with Ethan. We've finished quite a lot in this one. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. And yeah, make sure to keep watching the videos. They will provide